a king who had his wife executed because she could not give birth to a son. Hi, if this is your first time, I'm Maddie. Today we will examine the 6 sensational marriages of King Henry VIII, who is known for his intriguing life. If you are ready, let's move on to our video. Henry's older brother Arthur was the first prince, so he was supposed to inherit the throne. However, an unexpected death turned all plans upside down. Henry VIII ascended to the throne of England the very next day. His first act was to marry Catherine of Aragon, his dead brother's wife. 8. Henry and Catherine of Aragon had 6 children, but only one daughter survived, Mary I, who would go down in history as Bloody Mary. The king decided to divorce Catherine of Aragon because she could not give birth to a son. But divorce was not so easy among Catholics. In 1527, Henry asked the then Pope to annul the marriage, claiming that the marriage was unlawful in the eyes of God because of his wife's previous marriage to his brother. The Pope rejected Henry's request. 8. To divorce Catherine, Henry separated the entire country from the Roman Catholic Church and made a reform, establishing the Anglican Church, which represented English-specific Anglicanism. This church, under the command of the king, approved the divorce. Later, 8. Henry married Anne Boleyn, and Elizabeth I was born. However, people thought that Anne had bewitched Henry and was a witch. Anne Boleyn's inability to give birth to a male heir and her 2 consecutive miscarriages during her marriage strengthened the idea that Anne Boleyn was a witch. As for the king, Anne Boleyn's inability to give birth to a male heir also affected her relations with the king. Meanwhile, the king fell in love with Jane Seymour. 1535, Anne Boleyn was tried and found guilty of adultery, incest, and treason with 5 people, including her brother. On May 19, 1536, Anne Boleyn was executed. What remained of Anne Boleyn was a little girl who would later sit on the throne of England for many years as Queen Elizabeth I. The day after Anne's death. 8. Henry was engaged to Jane Seymour, the maid of his 2 previous wives. Jane also persuaded Henry to reconcile with Mary Tudor, who was expelled from the royal throne. Jane Seymour is often called Henry's favorite wife, but the Queen, her son 6. She died 2 weeks after Edward's birth. It was 2 years after Jane Seymour's death that Henry decided to remarry. Like Catherine, Anne of Cleves was one of Henry's strategic marriages. The king found Anne of Cleves ugly. Their marriage lasted 6 months, and then they divorced. The king later married Catherine Howard. Catherine was Anne Boleyn's cousin. The king met Catherine when she was a lady-in-waiting to Anne of Cleves. It didn't take long for this young and smiling girl to attract Henry's attention. They married in 1540, a few weeks after his divorce from Anne of Cleves. But their marriage would last only a year. After a while, rumors emerged that Catherine was having an affair with her cousin Thomas Culpeper. As a result, they stripped her of her title as queen. He was executed by beheading 3 months later. Catherine was only 17 years old when she died. The king's next marriage was to Catherine Parr. Catherine was working in Mary Tudor's household and was looking forward to marrying Thomas Seymour, brother of the late Jane Seymour. Unfortunately, 8. Henry wanted her for himself. Knowing that becoming queen would benefit her loved ones, Catherine agreed to this marriage. On July 12, 1543, 8. She married Henry. She was also a wonderful stepmother to Henry's 2 young children, Elizabeth and Edward, and an avid student of theology. Catherine married Henry at Hampton Court Palace. He took a close interest in Henry's 2 daughters, Mary and Elizabeth. England was governed Catholic, and Catherine arranged for a Protestant tutor for Henry's only son, the next king. They had adopted Protestantism with their bridesmaids, and they had books about it. And Askew was burned at the stake while defending Protestantism. There were rumors that the Queen had something to do with it. Documents regarding the Queen's execution were prepared, but later the king gave up the execution. After Henry's death, Catherine married Thomas, and he died shortly after they had a daughter.